How do you really love someone, really invest in someone, especially someone who may have experienced some real trauma? How do you really support them but not take on that emotional burden yourself? That's a really tricky balance to get, and we get that question at Bridges for Communities a lot. So we decided to track down Katherine Cox, Director of Trauma Foundation Southwest, to ask that exact question. Katherine Cox from Trauma Foundation Southwest, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Grab a seat, grab a seat.
I think it's really important to be able to step in to loving and caring, but also being able to stay centred in yourself. And just to give you a little bit of science around this, what we find is if you step too far into someone else's experience, you start becoming identified with it. And then now we can do these snazzy brain scans. It shows that actually your brain chemistry starts to completely mirror the brain chemistry of the distressed person in front of you. And then, of course, you become distressed because that's what you're picking up. And then you're not in a position, A, you're distressed, which isn't great for you, but also B, you're not then in a position to help. And that's what we find when people step too far in and lose themselves. But then, of course, if you step too far out, you're disconnected. You're okay yourself, but you're not able to step into caring. But actually, if we get that balance right, where we step into care and we stay centred in ourselves, what we find, again, with the swanky brain scans we can do now, is that your brain will release those feel-good hormones like oxytocin that actually make us feel good. And that's where actually helping people also can help us. So that's the balance we want to get. And the way I can understand it, or it helps me understand it, is to think about it like a bit of a dance. So I'm going to stand up and demonstrate. So you want to, if you step too far in, you're going to fall in and you make yourself too vulnerable. Yeah. If you step too far back, you're not engaging. So what you want is a dynamic balance of stepping forward and back so that you stay centred, but you're actually stepping into care with somebody. Yeah. And if you get that dynamic balance right, then you're actually in this really beautiful position. And I think one of the things that helps me is to think at different conversations and different times, am I stepping too far in and I need to find my centre again? Yeah. And I can do that by grounding or reminding myself of who I am and my values and why I'm there. Or am I stepping too far and I'm thinking too much about myself and I'm feeling disconnected, and then I step forward into caring again. Yeah. And I think that's the balance that's really useful to stay mindful of when you're in these sorts of conversations. Oh. And so to find your centre, that's important in those conversations, but also, of course, outside of those conversations. So to think, how do I bring my compass point back to true? And that will be different for different people. It would be stroking your dog or going for a run or watching trashy TV, whatever it is that helps you find your centre again so that you can then step again into care.
Great. Because I was going to ask you, what are some of those centering techniques that you mentioned, going for a run, stroking your dog, watching trashy TV? Is it different for everyone? Are you just saying to people, find the thing that sort of recharges you?
It's exactly that. And I think that's the bit. It's not so helpful to think, oh, well, this person does it, I should do it, or do a Google search. To think for yourself, what is it that brings me back to my centre?
Great. And do you find if, let's say you're meeting someone and you're having coffee with someone for an hour or so, do you then say you should do your sort of centering recharge quite quickly afterwards?
I think that's really helpful, yes. One of the things that we can do in life in general, and particularly if we're working or volunteering in this sector, I think, is we can get very caught up with there's lots to do, and there is lots to do. But in order to keep ourselves, in order to make it sustainable, we need to take those pockets of moments between perhaps difficult conversations to find our centre point again. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. If someone's in that relationship with someone, they've got a really good friendship, they've kind of doing they're really engaging in someone's life, but they're also learning to step back, and they've got the dance and they're kind of there. But then one day someone shares something really traumatic with them. What do you do if you suddenly feel like, okay, now I've overstepped it and I'm kind of waking up in the night thinking about them? And how do you sort of step back and re-boundary? What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, and I think it can really, really help to talk to somebody else about those sorts of conversations, which can derail any of us. And that's where colleagues are really important, line managers or volunteer coordinators are really important, and the supervision we offer are really important as well, where they're, whilst maintaining confidentiality, we also share some of the feelings that can come up for us in this work.
So maybe one of the things we love to do is signpost people to, people like you who can really support people with trauma or secondary trauma as well. How would people get in contact with Trauma Foundation Southwest if they wanted to?
Absolutely. Our contact details are on our website. If anyone makes an inquiry, they'll probably come straight to me, and I can answer any of their questions or set up a meeting.
Great. So if people Google Trauma Foundation Southwest, they'll get to you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. And then last question I wanted to ask you. Let's say if someone has just met someone that they're beginning to form a friendship with, and they're aware, okay, maybe you've come from a traumatic situation. Where do you start when it begins that friendship?
Such a good question, because that conversation starter can sometimes feel quite awkward and you don't know what to ask. And I suppose one of the things that I always got told as a child was a bad thing, and now I'm not a child anymore, I think is a really good thing, is curiosity. And I think people want us to be curious about their lives, their interests, how they are, maybe what their experience was of things like food and music and their culture back home. They don't have to talk about the traumatic things that have happened to them, and in a, say, befriending or volunteering situation, that's a perfect time to have a conversation about the things that are joyous. So I would say, remember to be curious, ask questions, be interested in that person.
So thank you, Katherine Cox from Trauma Foundation Southwest, for those insights. We had learning the dance of not stepping too far in. You get tangled in someone else's trauma, but not taking too much of a back step, that you stay too distant, but finding that sweet spot where you can really love and engage with someone whilst being centered yourself. We talked about having centering activities, so that for some people, stroking their dog or going for a run or finding whatever activity refreshes and recharges you. Thirdly, the advice of, as someone who's supporting someone else, making sure we get support, you have someone that you can talk to as well. And then, of course, not forgetting the fun activities, being able to talk to people about food or music or craft or sport, the things in life that are fun. So thank you, Katherine Cox, for those insights. If you think that video will be helpful for someone else, feel free to share it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more films like this. And of course, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.